Well, thank you for doing this with me, Kim.
Sure.
So this is for my project where I'm going to ask you a couple questions about you as a leader and basically your career and what you've done in the past.
Okay, sure.
Okay, so first thing, you're the Director of Revenue Management at Park Hyatt, New York.
Sure.
Would you mind telling me what school did you go to and what you majored in?
Sure. I went to James Madison University, and I actually majored in health science with a minor in nutrition.
Oh, so not hospitality related.
Not hospitality related. Nope.
Okay, so well, that would lead me to my next question, which was, did you always know if you wanted to be in hospitality?
No, it kind of came out by accident. I was on spring break and during my junior year and got relocated from a hotel and started to learn a lot more about the hotel business and how it works and this whole concept that you could get walked from somewhere. And the whole thing was kind of interesting to me. And some of the girls I was with suggested, they were like, oh, you kind of like are good at this. You like this kind of thing. And coincidentally, there was an internship that summer at the Homestead in Hot Springs, Virginia, which is near my school. It's a 5-star, 5-diamond resort out in the middle of nowhere. And so I said, well, let me just try it.
This was while you were in college?
Yes, a summer after my junior year. I interned there for the entire summer, and that's when I fell in love with the business.
Oh.
I was going into my senior year, so I took some classes with the space that I had left in hospitality, but knew that I wanted to just get out and actually do it, and was fortunate enough to convince Hyatt that what I was doing was close enough to what they were looking for at the time, and that's how I ended up in the hospitality business.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that story.
Mm-hmm.
That's very interesting. I always find it really interesting when it's not what you always wanted to do and you kind of stumble onto it, and people that usually do kind of fall in love with it.
Exactly. That's exactly what happened to me.
That's very interesting. Mm-hmm. Well, you answered my question, which was, how did you decide to get into the field, which is just by stumbling into it and really falling in love with it.
Exactly.
How many years have you been working in hospitality?
So I guess that makes it officially 22, 21 of which have been with Hyatt, and then I had that 1 year where I worked at the Homestead.
Wow, that's a nice career time that you've been in hospitality.
Well, it's nice because I think even if you work for the same company, you work at different hotels and see different departments, so it doesn't feel like, oh, I've been doing the same thing for the last 21 years.
Yes, that's really interesting. And then can you tell me a little bit about the different positions that you've held in hotels since you started in hospitality and how they led you to your current role?
Sure. So I started as a corporate management trainee, and my concentration was supposed to be in rooms. So I started off in housekeeping. At the time, the hotels were really busy and expanding very quickly, so they needed people. I was out of my corporate management training program in 7 weeks. It was supposed to be 14 months. And right into housekeeping. After housekeeping, I did reservations, front office, guest service, all at the Hyatt Regency Washington on Capitol Hill. Then I moved back to my roots of New York and worked as a front office manager at the Grand Hyatt New York. From there, I became a rooms exec, which is Hyatt's version of an assistant general manager at the Hyatt in Jersey City. And back at this same time, this is when Hyatt was investigating and really developing what was revenue management within hotels. And based on my family life at the time and the idea that Hyatt was creating this new discipline that was on the management committee level, which my job as an assistant general manager in Jersey City was the same level. I thought, oh, this could be a good kind of connection for me that would allow me to have a little bit better work-life balance than working in operations.
Better hours.
Yes, definitely better hours. But at the same time, I could still maintain my level on the management committee and some of the things that were important to me. And it was exciting, too, to kind of be on the ground floor of what revenue management was and is becoming for Hyatt. And so since then, which was 13 years ago, I have worked at Hyatt Morristown, Princeton, Jersey City, Greenwich, Ondas, Fifth Avenue. I'm sure I'm forgetting a few along the way. And 3 years ago was given the opportunity to come here to the flagship hotel, the Park Hyatt New York, as the director of revenue management. So basically an operations start led me into a revenue management career.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Okay, and then, well, the next question was, you answered my question about Hyatt, how long you had been with Hyatt. How many years as a leader?
So I guess almost 21, because I started as a corporate trainee, and after 7 weeks, I actually became the assistant executive housekeeper, which was a huge jump. I had just graduated from college, and that hotel has 90 housekeepers,
Wow.
a lot of whom had worked at that hotel for over 30 years, longer than I had been alive at the time. So it was a huge learning curve for me, because not only was I thrust into kind of that leadership role, but I was also into a role where I was leading people who had a lot of tenure and seniority.
Yeah, that makes sense. Makes it a little bit harder.
Yes.
For your first time being a leader.
For the first time, I learned a lot
and
of lessons the hard way.
Too.
Big team.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay, and then so the next one is, can you tell me a little bit more about? Oh, I'm sorry, I asked that already. What is your best and worst experience that you've had as a leader?
I think to me, and the thing that I really have learned along this way, is being a leader isn't about your own performance or your own success, right? Because I think a lot of us who are in the hospitality industry, we're hard workers, and we're used to getting results, right? But at a certain point when you really become a leader, it's not about your results, it's about getting your team to have results. So always my best experiences, I'll start with those, are when I see someone who I've worked with become successful. Because I think, to me, that's what it's really about. That's how I grew up in Hyatt, and that's how I see it for other people. So when I see someone be successful and move on or become their first leadership committee position, or even move into a different department, into something that they're happy to do, to me, that's success.
It's rewarding.
So rewarding. I had a gentleman who worked with me at the Grand Hyatt New York who became a police officer, but that was really his lifelong dream. And we were able to use some of his connections that he had with Hyatt to get into the academy. And to me, that was still as fulfilling, because it was something that was important to him. So I think that for me is seeing other people's success. That's always my best experience. I would say that definitely my worst experience is when I was in housekeeping. Right at the beginning, I had a housekeeper who was being abused by her husband.
Wow.
And she didn't feel secure enough to leave, and she had language barrier. She was on a whole other bunch of things, and we got her as much help as that we possibly could. But sometimes at the end of the day, people make choices, and so it was. To this day, when somebody asks me that question, she's the first thing that comes into my mind. Always, because I think that's the hardest part about helping people or trying to lead them or being a part of their life, is that sometimes at the end of the day, people make choices or they're in situations they can't get themselves out of. And so you provide as much as you can, but sometimes I hate to see anyone in pain like that.
Of course, and I think that you can help them. Any more than you already have.
Yeah, it's a tough situation. Yeah, that's the hardest part, because at the end of the day, you do what you do, people do what they do. It's not 100%, right? And so to me, those are the hardest moments.
Makes sense. And then next question. If you could choose one word to describe the kind of leader that you are, what would that be and why?
I would probably say passionate. And that's because I'm passionate about the people that I work with, the places that I work for, and I think that's how I can convince Hyatt to give me a job, is that I had the energy and the dedication to make an impact. And I think, to me, if you're doing any job that you're not passionate about, you're never going to be a leader. You're never going to be good at it. You're never going to inspire people around you. And I don't think there's any way to really fake that. I think you either you're bought in or you're not. And if you really are, then you can bring all the people around you, hopefully with you on that journey.
Yeah, that makes sense too. And what is the kind of culture that you like your team to have? And what are some ways that you try to encourage that?
I think for me, the way that I like to think of any team is constantly evolving and learning, because we work in a business and really a global environment right now that's always changing. When I first started working in revenue, there weren't even half the OTAs that there are now, or all of these different things. And so it's not a job that you can just sit in and say, I know how to do ABC, I'm good. You have to always learn. And so for teams and environments, I try to create that culture of learning, but at the same time, making sure that people have the freedom to make mistakes. Yeah. I often say, if you make a mistake, just own up to it. Just don't make that same mistake twice. Because the reality is, mistakes are going to happen. Yeah. We have to make decisions on the fly. And for the most part, if you make a wrong one, it's not the end of the world, right? Yeah. But the key is to learn from that and make it something that you can grow from. And if you think of your day and all of that, in that whole learning environment, you'll always be happy. A lot of times I say, I learned something new, I can go home today, which is kind of a joke, but also kind of a mantra for me, because even 21 years later, I pride myself on learning something, at least one thing new every day.
I think that's a good mantra to have, not only at work, but in life probably too, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Nobody knows everything.
I agree. My favorite quality about you is how you like to teach and develop your team. And I think that ties in with how you've answered your other questions. Did you always want to be this way, or did someone influence you and teach you how important that was?
That's funny. I think part of it was that originally in my health science degree, I wanted to be a physical education teacher or a kindergarten teacher. And so I think my mother was a teacher. I have a couple siblings who are a teacher. I think there's some kind of genetics or environment that I appreciate that. But I also really think it's the culture. It's the culture that's been created within this company where that's how I learned. People who are willing to say, here's this girl right off the street, straight from college. We're just put her in charge of 90 housekeepers. And we're not just going to leave her out to dry. We're going to really train and mentor her and do things that help her in life and get to different places. And so to me, that's the culture that this company has always been about. It's the reason I've always stayed within this one company, because the idea that we help each other and we train each other and we continue to grow together, that to me is what makes everybody successful.
I agree. I think that that's one of my favorite things, that I've never worked for someone that was so much about teaching and growing and developing their own, because I feel like every leader obviously wants their team to be good, but they want them to be good for selfish reasons, which is so that your team is successful and you're good, but not necessarily thinking of it as a whole as the company or as a whole as the hotel, for us to train and develop each other and kind of like grow us in this community, in this organization that is Hyatt and the hotel.
Right, and I think that's nice for me, having gone from hotel to hotel throughout my career, is that, to me, is that fabric that keeps it the same. And when I came here, something I really wanted to make sure, being a new hotel, when I started, the hotel had been open for 2 years, now we're about to celebrate 5, that is that consistent thread that seems to be, even if you're in DC or Connecticut or New Jersey, wherever you are, that same thread of growing and teaching and learning together, that's what I think creates that company culture.
I agree. As a leader, you're always encouraging us to think of what's next and plan for the future. Do you have any idea of what's next in your career future?
Oh, that's a good one. So originally, when I came into Hyatt, you'd never know, I thought I wanted to be a human resources director. That's why they put me in housekeeping to start, because they said that's the most employees. And then within about 2 years, I said, oh no, I think I want to be a general manager. And I've toyed with the idea of becoming a regional director of revenue, and filled in a couple times in that role. At this point in my life, I'm not really interested in traveling for work. For leisure, sure, but for work, not so much.
Yes.
And I think, maybe 10 years from now, when my kids are grown, then I'll really have to make a choice. And I think it'll be between becoming a general manager or becoming a regional director within revenue management, both which I find equally exciting, and how nice to be able to do this and then potentially have that choice when my life allows for it again.
I agree. I think that's very interesting. And they're both are very fun, new, and challenging opportunities. So that's very interesting. And then my last question is, My last question for you is, do you have any words of advice for someone looking to start their career as a leader and as a leader in hospitality?
I think the first thing to do is to be present. I think the hardest thing in today's day and age, and it certainly wasn't for me 21 years ago, is that it's very easy to be disconnected from the things that are going on around you. It's very easy to be on your phone. It's very easy to be on social media. And I think the most important thing in hospitality is to be connected. And when you start out in the business is to absorb every single opportunity. Because especially a lot of times when you first come in, you're getting these amazing training opportunities. Like go around the entire hotel and meet everybody. Or you might be in a training program where you get to go department by department and shadow them. A lot of times people look at that and go, oh, do I have to go to stewarding? Oh, do I have to do this? But I think the more that people are present and absorb those experiences, the more you really get out of the business. Because I always say that housekeeping was my favorite department, even though it was challenging. I went back there twice. I had a lot of bad days there. But the people I met and the stories that I heard and the connections that I made, I still treasure those 21 years later. And so I think when you're starting out in the business, don't take for granted any opportunity that you get, because every opportunity you get to train and learn and meet and connect with new people are great. So be open to all of them, because you never know what one of those opportunities is going to end up opening a door that gets you into what you maybe always wanted to be.
Where it might lead you to.
Yeah, exactly right. Believe me, I never grew up saying I want to be a director of revenue management. Didn't even exist when I was in college. Yeah. So you never know. So keep yourself open to all the opportunities, because that's one of the most exciting things about hospitality is there's so many different paths that you can go down while still enjoying all of the interactions and things that make hospitality so special.
I agree. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this interview with me, Kim. I really appreciate it. And that is all for now.
My pleasure.